What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the local meta report here in St. Louis. I am Brad, aka the Mayor of Lorcana and co-host of the Rules of Villainy podcast. This is a video series where each and every week I bring to you the latest and greatest in Disney Lorcana winning decks here in the area. All of our local leagues, the ones who participate, the 3-0s of the night. We got a short list this week, but a good one. An exciting one to me because none of them are Amethyst Steel, which is usually the case here in St. Louis. The one Andy from the podcast would argue that Amethyst Steel might have made the list if they played their final game Thursday night, but alas, that did not happen. So we will not be including that Amethyst Steel this week, but that's okay. It is a very good deck, and we talk about it so much. Let's talk about the decks that won this week, though, starting with this one. And that first deck belongs to Justin at the Collector Store on Tuesday night, going 3-0 with Old Faithful, he calls it. That's right, it is Blurple Sapphire Amethyst. And it is a little bit different. Actually, it's quite a bit different than the Blurple that he 3-0'd with last week in our last week's video, where he was testing out a lot of different boost mechanics. He had the Cheshire Cat, he had Kristoff, which was really inspired. And of course, he did keep the Ursula, who is just a very, very good card. The 5-cost inkable 4/5 that quests for 2, and when you boost her for 1, she quests for 1 more and is evasive. This time, that is the only Whisper in the deck. This went back to, as he said, Old Faithful, the more traditional Blurple, where he's starting off with a lot more 1-drops. The Royal Guard, I think, is a really slept-on card this set with the mechanics that the deck can do with Demona coming out. If that Royal Guard is established, suddenly that 1-cost 1/2 could be pumped up to be a 4 or a 5/2 or something at that point. There are a lot of ways to boost him up, even if you bounced back the Ursula with the elephants that are now back in the deck. But looking at the curve here, he's got a lot of 1-drops between Rafiki, the Royal Guard, Basil. He's looking for ramp onto, of course, as you always do with Blurple, with Tipo or Sail the Azurite Sea. He was experimenting last week, as I said, with Kristoff, or if he missed 2, or maybe he still played Kristoff on a 3 with ramping on 2 because he could, and he could boost it in the same turn, but not doing any of that here. Of course, we got the Dumbo Genie. Iago's back in here as well at the 4-drop, and 4 of Belle, Elsa, and Ursula, as we already talked about. Demona has been making her appearance known in a lot of Amethyst decks right now, coming out, making everything exerted, drawing up the 3 cards if you don't have them already. And the rest here, we know 4 of Hades. The Hypnotic Strength is back for some illusion combat, probably a little bit of strength boost if he needed it in a favorable challenge. Another way to pump up the octopus if needed, both with the strength and the draw of the card. Magical Maneuvers has been a very good card for a while here as well. 1 of 1 jump, which is been popping up in a lot of the Sapphire decks as well. And then not beyond the horizon, into the unknown, and Second Star on the right for massive card draw there with the Sing Together mechanic. But yeah, it's pretty much cookie cutter. The Blurple that we know, with a few little spices, especially the Ursula, the new boost Ursula. It's so good. But yeah, I don't know the matchups. I do know that he cooked. He messaged me right away. He said, "Hey," he messaged me a GIF, actually. It was really funny, and I knew exactly what he was implying, that he got the work done. So congratulations to Justin. I think I don't know if it was this exact deck, but I know that he took Blurple to CCS this past weekend as well, and did really well for as far as I know. I think that at the beginning rounds that I was able to follow, he was winning. So I'd like to hear how this deck did, or whatever changes he made, and maybe we'll talk to him here soon and see how it went. But congratulations for your Tuesday night 3-0. All right, and that second deck of the week comes to you by way of Lincoln out at Manticore Game Shop in O'Fallon, Missouri. He is also on Blurple, and this deck is almost the exact same boost Blurple deck that we talked about just a little bit ago, and that Justin 3-0'd with last week. It's almost like Lincoln probably saw Justin's deck and thought, hey, I want to check that out, and he got the job done with it as well. We talked about this Kristoff a little bit just a bit ago on Justin's deck and how he was experimenting with that. He is a 3-cost inkable 2/3 quest for 2, and you can boost him for 1. And whenever this character quests, if there's a card under him, you put the top card of your deck into your inkwell. face down and exert it. And as I mentioned on the segment before, it's a good card to play on 3, even if you did ramp on 2, because you can do both the quest, not the quest, but the play and the boost in the same turn and continue ramping at that point. And unfortunately, you don't have any enter the play or enter the board abilities there. But if, in a pickle, if you want some extra ramp to get to your bigger cost cards a lot quicker, you certainly could do that. A few changes that he did make, though. Justin was running one of the Cusco last week, as he was Monstro. You won't see either of those here, but everything else is virtually identical. I think there was a few number changes on some of the other things, but to differentiate from the deck we talked about previously, we do have all the Whispers in here. Again, this is a boost centric deck where we're playing with the new boost mechanic from Whispers in the Well. We got 3 of the Cheshire Cat, which is just one of the best cards in the set. Of course, we talked about the Kristoff, 4 of there, and 3 of the Ursula at the 5-drop as well, which we already talked about on Justin's deck. Some other key differences here: a few less 1-drops. I think that we're missing the Palace Guard and the Basils. We do have a Spooky Sight, or not Spooky Sight, Sudden Scare. I get those two confused all the time. They essentially do similar things, but Sudden Scare is just a hard removal 4-cost action where put chosen opposing character in their player's inkwell, but the caveat is that opposing player also gets a top deck ink as well. So you're ramping them twice with that card, but it is hard removal for something you might not otherwise have the ability to do. The rest of the deck looks pretty Blurple-esque as we know it, with the Dumbo Genie, Elsa, everything there in the mid game. The 5-cost Hades, which I failed to mention in Justin's deck earlier. I feel like might not have been there. Maybe we can double check, but it's he was not running the new 5-cost Hades in the previous deck. So Link is running 4 of those here, which is let's make a deal. Basically, I'll either draw 2 cards or you're going to bottom one of your characters. Always going to be the biggest threat on the board to the player playing the Hades. But I do know Link got it done. I don't have the matchups, or if I do, I'm sorry, Steven, I missed them. But congratulations to Lincoln. Love seeing Blurple have this kind of success. It's been one of my favorite ink pairings for a long time. And love seeing Link get it done. So congratulations one more time, and I'm sure we'll see you on here again. And finally, back at the collector store on Friday night, our third and final deck of the week comes to you by way of Megan with Emerald Sapphire. When she sent me this deck, she called it the Ed Special, which I can only assume means that it is an Ed Chu deck, a North American Continental winner and second place runner-up in Worlds. This deck is mean. It is the boogeyman of the set. This is the deck that has the Prince Philip combo that everybody is dreading, where you play the 3-cost Prince Philip. Eventually, you sing Malicious, Mean, and Scary to put 1 damage across the board, and then shift that Prince Philip into the big Prince Philip. 6/6, quest for 3 evasive. Banish all damaged characters on play. If you want to go through the play lines here, you got the 1-drop Clarabelle, which sets up the Clarabelle shift eventually if she's not dealt with. And she also has a kicker eventually later on in the game when you have more ink. If you play her, you can use her to banish an item, which will come into handy or come into play when you're up against a Chromacon or maybe a guidebook that was left unchecked or something. But most of the time, it's the Chromacon that's going to be the target of that in those dog matches that just take over when they're left unchecked. But going through the rest of the deck, of course, we got the ramp on 2 with Tipo and Sail. We got the other Clarabelle that draws you a card, and then of course the Prince Philip on 3 as well. Donald Duck, the gentleman, perfect gentleman, is a 2/5 quest for 2, and whenever at the start of your turn, each player may draw a card, and that's come into play quite a bit in these decks. And of course, the chase card for a lot of people this set is the Cinderella, the 4-cost uninkable 2/3 quest for 1, former villain of the week here on the podcast, or at the end of your turn if you played a princess, including her, you can put a card from your hand into the inkwell face down and draw a card. So it's just another ramp card there, and she comes out, and we saw when Ed played Aiden, I think it was multiple triggers, just multiple Cinderellas doing multiple triggers and just ramping and drawing, finding all the answers you need and setting up that Prince Philip combo. Basil, a former villain of the week. Most of this deck has been a villain of the week actually on the podcast, but this Basil as well. Undercover Detective, 5/4, 7-cost inkable, quest for 2, and whenever he comes into play, you can return a chosen character to that player's hand, and whenever he quests, the chosen opponent discards a card at random, so he gets double effects there. It's doubly annoying. And in Clarabelle, we all know what she does. Hades, 4 of Prince Philip that we talked about, and the actions to scry through the deck. We got the develop that we talked about, sail the Azurite Sea for ramp, vision of the future to look at 5 and take 1, malicious, mean, and scary, and you're welcome, which is another just song where it loads you up. It's removal for the opponent's board. They get to draw 2 cards, and then most of the time they either have Clarabelle on board or they're setting up to play that Clarabelle so they can draw a ton of cards after that. So it's just a very, very, very good deck. And I'm surprised actually that we don't see a lot of these big events so far. This deck at the top of it, yeah, we've been seeing a lot of Amethyst Steel, a lot of Blurple. Ruby Amethyst is on its way up. I don't know that it's won any big events yet, unless I'm mistaken, but it is late tonight and my brain is fried. But this deck is poised to be at the top spot of one of these events coming up, and I'm waiting to see it because it's that good, and I want to see it happen. So somebody, maybe Megan or maybe somebody else, but we'll get it done with this deck. She got it done 3-0 Friday night. Congratulations to her, and we will see her on here again, I'm sure, in the future. That's going to do it. That's going to wrap up this week's local meta report here in St. Louis. Thank you so much for tuning in. I did tell you it was going to be a short one. We didn't have as many decks this week as we generally do, and that's totally fine. We are all setting, a lot of people are out of town for CCS. I know that there's a PPG event coming up next weekend. Next weekend is also Infinity Weekend, where all the local stores are going to be hosting an Infinity event. So check the Ravensburger Play Hub to get registered, find your closest one. If you are in the area and you haven't registered yet, I check out Game Night on Saturday at 10:30 a.m. I will be hosting a free one, up to 40 promo, whole new world promo cards will be given out at that event. Bring your best Infinity deck. It's going to be fun to go back to that mode and just play all the cards and not just the rotated cards that we are currently in right now. I'm really excited to bust out some old decks and probably get my butt kicked, but we're going to have fun doing that. So consider checking that out. But then, yeah, I think the only other thing I want to shout out is January 3rd. We will be live streaming here on the channel once again, the set championships at Impact Gaming Center. It's going to be a lot of fun. Triple case tournament. And so we're going to start pumping that out. Hope you guys can check that out if you're in the area. If you're not and you have the means to travel, it's going to be worth checking out. It's going to be great practice before Richmond the weekend after. Richmond, Virginia, DLC Richmond is going to be so much fun and a great opportunity to get some practice in there. So consider checking that out. And if you can't, come hang out with us on the channel. We'll be streaming that live and hopefully bring some great Lorcana to you that day. So I think that's all I got. So thank you once again for tuning in. If you like this kind of content, please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications for any kind of Rules of Villainy content. Of course, we have this. We have the podcast proper. We have Deck Test Tuesdays with Andy and Kirsten. And we have a bunch of shorts now. Andy and Kirsten are currently working on a advent calendar, opening packies every day and having fun doing that. So check those out. And until next time, happy questing.